Naomi Brooks stood in the hospital hallway with tears running down her face. Through the window, she could see her mama lie in the white bed, connected to tubes and machines that beeped softly. Mama's eyes were closed, and her chest moved up and down slowly, like she was too tired to breathe properly. "Mrs. Brooks." A nurse touched Naomi's shoulder gently. "The doctor needs to speak with you." Naomi's heart dropped into her stomach. She knew what this meant. More bills, more medicine, more money she didn't have. The doctor was a kind woman with gray hair, but her words were like stones dropping into water. "Your mother needs surgery soon. Without it, I'm afraid she won't make it through the month. The cost is $40,000. $40,000. Naomi might as well have said 40 million. Naomi worked at this very hospital, cleaning rooms and helping nurses carry things. She made barely enough money to buy food each week. She had already spent everything she had on her mama's medicines and tests. I don't have that kind of money," Naomi whispered, feeling ashamed even though it wasn't her fault. That night, Naomi sat alone in their tiny apartment. The walls were thin, and she could hear the neighbors arguing next door. She looked at the stack of bills on the kitchen table. All of them red, meaning she was late paying them. She put her head in her hands and cried until no more tears would come. The next morning at work, something strange happened. A tall man in an expensive black suit walked right up to Naomi while she was mopping the floor. He had cold blue eyes and a smile that didn't reach those eyes at all. "Miss Naomi Brooks?" he asked, even though he already knew who she was. "Yes." Naomi held the mop handle tighter, feeling scared without knowing why. "My name is Gregory Thornton. I have a business proposal that could solve all your problems." He handed her a white card with gold letters on it. "Meet me at this address tonight at 7 o'clock. Come alone." Before Naomi could ask any questions, he turned and walked away, his shiny shoes clicking on the hospital floor. Naomi stared at the card. The address was in the rich part of the city where she had never been. Part of her wanted to throw the card in the trash. But another part, the part that was terrified of losing her mama, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was an answer to her prayers. That evening, Naomi took 2 buses to reach the address. The building was taller than any she had ever seen, all glass and gleaming metal. A doorman in a fancy uniform let her inside, and an elevator carried her up to the top floor. Gregory Thornton sat behind a huge desk in an office with windows that showed the whole city sparkling below like a blanket of stars. "Sit down, Miss Brooks," he said, pointing to a leather chair. Naomi sat on the edge of the seat, her hands folded in her lap. "I'll get straight to the point," Gregory said. "My nephew, Ethan Thornton, was in a terrible car accident 3 months ago. He's in a coma. The doctors say he might never wake up." Naomi didn't understand why he was telling her this. "I'm sorry to hear that, but—" Gregory held up one hand to stop her. "My family owns Thornton Industries. We make cars, parts, medicines. We're worth billions. But there's a problem. If Ethan dies without a wife, the company passes to people I don't trust, people who would destroy everything we built." Naomi's stomach twisted. She was starting to understand. "I need you to marry Ethan," Gregory said simply, like he was asking her to mail a letter. "What?" Naomi jumped up from her chair. "That's crazy. I can't marry someone I don't even know. Someone who's asleep. It's just paperwork," Gregory said calmly. "A ceremony, some pictures. You wear a nice dress, say a few words, kiss him once, just once, and then you go home. The marriage will be real in the eyes of the law, but you won't have to do anything else. After a year, if Ethan hasn't woken up, we'll quietly end the marriage. You'll get a nice payment and go on with your life." "But why me?" Naomi asked, her voice shaking. Gregory's cold smile returned. "Because you're desperate. Because you need money more than you need pride. Because no one will ask too many questions about a poor hospital worker who got lucky." He pushed a folder across the desk. "I'll pay for your mother's surgery. All of it. Plus, I'll give you $50,000 cash. Your mother lives, you get money, and all you have to do is one little ceremony." Naomi felt sick. This was wrong. Everything about it felt wrong. But when she thought about her mama lying in that hospital bed, getting weaker every day, "If I say no," she whispered. Gregory shrugged. "Then you go home. Your mother doesn't get the surgery. And in a few weeks, you'll be planning a funeral instead of a wedding." Naomi closed her eyes. She felt trapped, like a mouse in a corner with a cat blocking the only way out. "I'll do it," she finally said, her voice so quiet she could barely hear herself. 3 days later, Naomi stood in a huge room filled with flowers and candles. She wore a white dress that cost more than she made in a year. Cameras flashed from every direction. Important-looking people she didn't know sat in the rows of chairs, whispering to each other. And at the front of the room, lying in what looked like a fancy hospital bed decorated with white ribbons, was Ethan Thornton. He was handsome, even sleeping. His dark hair was combed neatly, and someone had dressed him in an expensive black suit, but his eyes were closed and machines next to the bed beeped quietly, keeping track of his heartbeat. The ceremony was the strangest thing Naomi had ever experienced. A priest said words that seemed to float past her ears without meaning. She repeated vows to a man who couldn't hear her. People clapped at the wrong times. Photographers shouted for her to smile. "Now," the priest said with an uncomfortable cough, "the bride may kiss the groom." This was the part Naomi had been dreading most. She stepped closer to Ethan's bed, her hands shaking. Up close, she could see that he looked peaceful, like he was just having a nice dream. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to him, so quietly that no one else could hear. "I'm so sorry they're making me do this." She leaned down and gently pressed her lips to his. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Ethan's eyes opened. Naomi gasped and jumped back. The room erupted in shouts and screams. Doctors rushed forward. Cameras flashed so fast it looked like lightning. Ethan blinked slowly, looking confused and lost. His eyes found Naomi's face, and something passed between them. A connection neither of them understood. "What?" Ethan's voice was rough and weak. "What's happening?" Gregory pushed through the crowd, his face a mixture of shock and something else. Something that looked like fear. And Naomi realized, standing there in her fake wedding dress with cameras capturing every moment, that she had just stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than she ever imagined. Her life would never be the same again. The next morning, Naomi's face was on every television screen in the city. "Miracle Bride Awakens Coma Patient with Kiss of True Love," the headline screamed. Naomi sat in her tiny apartment, watching herself on the news over and over again. The videos showed her leaning down to kiss Ethan, then his eyes opening, then the chaos that followed. The news people called it a miracle. They called it a fairy tale. They called Naomi an angel sent from heaven. But Naomi knew the truth. There was no true love. There was no miracle. There was just a desperate woman who needed money and a rich family with secrets. Her phone rang constantly. News reporters wanted interviews. Magazines offered money for her story. Strangers found her number somehow and called to congratulate her or ask for favors. Naomi unplugged her phone and pulled the curtains closed. A knock came at her door that afternoon. When Naomi peeked through the peephole, she saw 2 large men in black suits standing outside. "Miss Brooks, Mr. Gregory Thornton requests your presence," one of them said through the door. Naomi's hands trembled as she opened the door. "I did what you asked. The wedding is done. Leave me alone." "The arrangement has changed," the man said. His voice was polite, but his eyes were hard. "Please come with us." Naomi didn't feel like she had a choice. She grabbed her jacket and followed them to a long black car waiting on the street. They drove to a mansion so big it looked like a castle from a storybook. Inside, everything was white marble and gold decorations. Paintings worth more than Naomi would make in her entire life hung on the walls. Gregory Thornton waited for her in a room filled with leather furniture and old books. "Sit," he commanded. Naomi sat, her heart pounding. "The media loves you," Gregory said, pacing back and forth like a tiger in a cage. "That's good. That's very good for us. But now we need to be smart. Ethan is awake, but he's very confused. The doctors say he has some memory problems from the accident. He doesn't remember much about his life before. What does this have to do with me? Naomi asked. Gregory stopped pacing and stared at her with those cold blue eyes. Everything. You're his wife now, in the eyes of the world. You're the woman who loved him so much that you brought him back from the edge of death. We need to keep that story going. But it's not true. Naomi protested. Truth doesn't matter, Gregory snapped. What matters is what people believe. The company's stock price went up 20% after your wedding. Investors are calling. Partners are interested again. You're good for business, Miss Brooks. He pulled out another folder and dropped it on the table between them. You'll move into the mansion. You'll visit Ethan in the hospital every day. You'll smile for cameras and give interviews about your love story. You'll play the devoted wife until I tell you to stop. And if I refuse? Naomi asked, even though she already knew the answer. Gregory smiled his terrible smile. Then the money stops. Your mother's surgery gets canceled. And I'll make sure everyone knows you were paid to marry my nephew. Your reputation will be destroyed. No one will hire you. You'll have nothing. Naomi felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You're a monster. I'm a businessman, Gregory corrected. And you made a deal. Now, keep your end of it. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of Naomi's life. She moved into a huge bedroom in the mansion. Servants brought her food she couldn't pronounce. Fashion people came and filled her closet with expensive dresses and shoes. Makeup artists taught her how to look perfect for cameras. Every afternoon, a car took her to the hospital where Ethan was recovering. At first, she just sat next to his bed while photographers took pictures through the window. The news kept showing the photos with captions like, "True love watches over him," and "The bride who never leaves his side." But slowly, something unexpected happened. Ethan started talking to her. "You don't have to stay," he said one day, his voice still weak, but getting stronger. "I know this must be weird for you." Naomi looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" Ethan gave her a small smile. "I don't remember marrying you. I don't remember anything about us. But I can tell when someone's pretending." He pointed to his head. "My memory's foggy, but I'm not stupid." Naomi's throat felt tight. She wanted to tell him everything. About Gregory, about the money, about her mama. But she was too scared. "I'm here because I want to be," she lied, and hated herself for it. But as the days passed, the lie started feeling less like a lie. Ethan was kind. He asked about her day and actually listened to her answers. He told her jokes that made her laugh. He never treated her like she was below him, even though he was rich and she was poor. One evening, after the photographers had left, Ethan asked, "Why did you really marry me, Naomi?" She almost told him. The words were right there on her tongue. But then she remembered Gregory's threats and stayed quiet. "Because," she started, then stopped. "It's complicated." "My uncle put you up to this, didn't he?" Ethan asked quietly. Naomi's eyes went wide. "How did you?" "I know my uncle," Ethan said, his face dark. "I'm starting to remember things. Not everything, but enough. He's done terrible things to protect this company. Terrible things." That night, back at the mansion, Naomi couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Ethan had said. What terrible things. She got out of bed and walked quietly through the dark hallways. The mansion was like a maze with hundreds of rooms. She got lost twice before finding herself outside Gregory's office. The door was slightly open. Inside, she could hear Gregory talking on the phone. "Doesn't matter what the truth is," Gregory was saying. "The crash investigation needs to go away. Pay whoever you need to pay. Bribe whoever you need to bribe." Naomi's blood went cold. If they find out the brakes were faulty on purpose, if they discover we knew about the defect and didn't recall the cars, this whole empire collapses. Ethan getting hurt was unfortunate, but it bought us time. No one suspects anything now that we have this fairy tale wedding story distracting everyone. Naomi pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. "The marriage was genius," Gregory continued. "Nobody's investigating us anymore. They're too busy watching the miracle bride and her devoted love." He laughed, and it was the ugliest sound Naomi had ever heard. She ran back to her room, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. Ethan's accident wasn't random. The Thornton Company had made cars with bad brakes. They knew the brakes could fail and kill people, but they sold the cars anyway to save money. And when Ethan got hurt in one of their own cars, Gregory used it as a chance to hide their crimes. How many people had died in those cars? How many families lost mothers, fathers, children? And Gregory had used Naomi, used her poverty, her desperation, her love for her mama, to cover it all up. Naomi sat on her bed, shaking with anger and fear. For the first time since this nightmare began, she made a choice that was truly hers. She was going to find proof. She was going to expose Gregory Thornton and his evil company, even if it cost her everything. The next morning, Naomi started searching. She went through Gregory's office when he was out. She looked in file cabinets and desk drawers. She found nothing at first, just boring business papers and old contracts. But then, hidden behind a painting of Gregory's father, she found a safe. The safe had a number lock. Naomi tried Ethan's birthday. She had learned it from his medical records. Nothing. She tried random numbers. Nothing. Then she remembered something. On Gregory's desk, there was a photo of a fancy car with a license plate. The numbers on the plate were 070789. She tried those numbers. Click. The safe opened. Inside were folders and folders of documents. Emails talking about the brake defects. Reports showing that the company knew people were dying. Letters from engineers begging Gregory to recall the cars. And Gregory's responses, telling them to stay quiet or lose their jobs. There were also bank statements showing huge payments to government officials, bribes to stop investigations. And there at the bottom was a document about Ethan's accident. Notes from a private investigator saying the crash looked suspicious and that the brake line may have been deliberately cut. Naomi felt sick. Had someone tried to kill Ethan? Was Gregory involved? She took photos of everything with her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could hardly hold it still. Just as she closed the safe, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She barely had time to put the painting back before the door opened. Gregory stood there, his face twisted with rage. "What are you doing in my office?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. I got lost," Naomi stammered. "I was looking for the bathroom." Gregory walked closer, his eyes scanning the room. They landed on the painting, which hung slightly crooked. "You've been very stupid, Miss Brooks," he said softly. "Very, very stupid." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "We have a problem. The girl knows too much. Take care of it." Naomi ran. She bolted past Gregory, out of the office, down the long hallways. Behind her, she heard shouting and heavy footsteps. She burst out Mansion's front door and ran into the street, still wearing her nightgown and slippers. A taxi was passing by. She waved her arms wildly. "Help! Please help me." The taxi stopped, and Naomi jumped inside. "Drive. Please just drive." As the taxi sped away, Naomi looked back at the mansion. Gregory stood at the door, watching her go, his phone pressed his ear. Naomi knew she had just made herself the most dangerous person in the city, but she also knew she had the proof to bring down an empire built on lies and death. The question was, would she survive long enough to use it? Naomi sat in a coffee shop across town, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. She had nowhere to go. She couldn't go back to her apartment. Gregory's men would be waiting there. She couldn't go to the hospital to see her mama. They'd find her there too. She was alone, scared, and running out of time. But she had the photos, the proof, the truth. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I know what you found. They're coming for you. Meet me at the old church on 5th Street. Come alone. A friend." Naomi's first thought was that it was a trap. But what choice did she have? She paid for her tea and walked quickly through the streets, keeping her head down. The old church was abandoned, with broken windows and weeds growing through cracks in the steps. Inside, someone was waiting in the shadows. "Naomi?" She jumped, then recognized a voice. "Ethan." He stepped into the light, coming through the broken windows. He looked different, stronger, healthier. But his eyes were filled with sadness and anger. "How did you find me?" Naomi asked. "I heard my uncle on the phone." Ethan said, "He was telling his men to find you and make you disappear. I snuck out of the hospital." He moved closer. "Naomi, please tell me what's happening. Tell me the truth. All of it." So she did. She told him about her sick mama and the impossible bills, about Gregory's terrible offer and the fake wedding, about discovering the truth about the faulty brakes and the people who died, about the evidence she found in the safe. "Your uncle didn't just hide the brake problems," Naomi said, her voice shaking. I think he might have tried to hurt you too. There was a report saying your crash looked suspicious." Ethan's face went pale. He sat down on a dusty church bench, his head in his hands. "I'm starting to remember things," he said quietly. "The day of my accident, I confronted my uncle. I had found some papers about the brake defects. I told him we needed to recall the cars immediately, that people were dying. He got so angry. He said I was going to destroy everything he built." Ethan looked up at Naomi with tears in his eyes. "I got in my car to drive home. And then nothing. I woke up weeks later to you kissing me at our wedding." "He tried to kill you," Naomi whispered. "His own nephew," Ethan said bitterly, "because I wanted to do the right thing. Because I cared more about people's lives than money." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the truth heavy in the air between them. "What do we do now?" Naomi asked. Ethan stood up, his jaw set with determination. "We fight back. Do you still have the photos?" Naomi pulled out her phone. "Everything's here." "There's a journalist," Ethan said. "Her name is Rebecca Martinez. She's been trying to investigate Thornton Industries for years, but she could never find proof. She's honest. She'll help us." They left the church together. Two people who barely knew each other but were now bound by something stronger than any wedding vows. The determination to tell the truth, no matter the cost. Rebecca Martinez met them at her small newspaper office. She was a woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. When Naomi showed her the photos, Rebecca's eyes grew wide. "This is it," Rebecca breathed. "This is everything I've been looking for. Proof of the defects, the cover-up, the bribes." She looked at Naomi with respect. "You're very brave, and you're in very serious danger." "I know," Naomi said, "but people died because of those cars. Families lost people they loved. Someone has to speak up for them." "We need to publish this fast," Rebecca said, already typing on her computer, "before Gregory can stop us." While Rebecca worked on the story, Ethan made phone calls. He called other journalists, lawyers, and even some honest police officers he trusted. He called the families of people who had died in Thornton cars and told them help was coming. Late that night, Rebecca's article went live on the internet. Thornton Industries covered up deadly brake defects. Exclusive evidence reveals massive corruption. Within an hour, the story exploded. Every news channel picked it up. Social media went crazy. People share it thousands and thousands of times. The miracle bride story. That everyone loved suddenly became something else. A story about a brave woman who risked everything to expose evil. If you're inspired by Naomi's courage, please share the story. Like and subscribe to hear more stories of people who stood up for truth. Your support helps these important stories reach more people. By morning, the police arrived at the Thornton mansion with handcuffs. Gregory Thornton stood in his expensive suit, his face red with rage, as officers read him his rights. Bribery, corruption, criminal negligence causing death, attempted murder. The list went on and on. "This is a mistake." Gregory shouted, "I'm Gregory Thornton. You can't arrest me." "Yes, we can," the police chief said calmly. "And we should have done it years ago." Gregory was taken away in a police car, along with 3 other company executives who had helped him hide the truth. Naomi watched from across the street, holding Ethan's hand. She couldn't believe it was over. "You did this," Ethan said softly. "You brought him down." "We did this," Naomi corrected. "Together." The next few months were hard but hopeful. Thornton Industries fell apart. The company had to pay huge amounts of money. to the families of people who died in their cars. New leaders took over and promised to make safe cars and treat workers fairly. Gregory went to trial and was found guilty. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Naomi's mama got her surgery. The operation went well, and she grew stronger every day. When she was finally healthy enough to leave the hospital, she hugged Naomi so tight it hurt. "My brave girl," Mama whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Naomi cried happy tears for the first time in months. Ethan and Naomi had to figure out what their relationship really was. They were married legally, but they barely knew each other. The whole thing had started with lies and force and desperation. "We could get divorced," Ethan suggested one day as they sat in a park, watching children play. "If that's what you want, I'd understand completely. You were trapped into this marriage. You deserve to be free." Naomi thought about it for a long time. "I don't want to rush into anything," she said finally. "But I don't want to rush out of anything either. Can we just start over? Get to know each other for real this time? No cameras, no pressure, no lies. Just two people trying to figure things out." Ethan smiled, a real smile, not the sad half smile he'd had for weeks. "I'd like that very much." So they dated. Real dates, like normal people. They went to movies and restaurants. They talked about their childhoods and their dreams. They laughed together and sometimes argued about silly things like which pizza toppings were best. Slowly, carefully, they built something real. Naomi went back to school to become a real nurse, not just a nurse's aide. Ethan used what was left of his family's money to start a foundation that helped families who had been hurt by bad companies. The foundation paid for lawyers and medical bills and made sure people had help when big businesses tried to hurt them. They hired Naomi's mama to work at the foundation, answering phones and helping organize events. She was so good at it that she became the office manager. 6 months after Gregory's arrest, Naomi and Ethan stood together at a memorial service for the people who had died in Thornton cars. There were photos of smiling faces, mothers, fathers, teenagers, grandparents. All people whose lives had been cut short because of greed. They deserved better, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. They deserved a company that cared about them more than money. Now they have justice, Naomi said, and their families know the truth. Sometimes that's all we can give, the truth and the promise to do better. A year later, Naomi and Ethan renewed their vows. But this time, everything was different. The ceremony was small, just Naomi's mama, a few close friends, Rebecca the journalist, and some families from the foundation. No cameras, no fancy decorations, no lies, just two people who had found each other in the darkness and decided to walk into the light together. "I promise to always tell you the truth," Naomi said, holding Ethan's hands. "I promise to always listen," Ethan replied, "and to always fight for what's right, even when it's hard." When they kissed, it wasn't for show. It wasn't to wake anyone up or save a company or fool the world. It was just a kiss between two people who had learned that real love grows slowly, built on honesty, courage, and shared purpose. Years later, people still told Naomi's story, but they didn't call it a miracle anymore. They called it what it really was. The story of an ordinary woman who found extraordinary courage when it mattered most. They told it to remind people that truth is more powerful than money. That one person speaking up can change everything. That the poor and powerless have just as much right to dignity and justice as the rich and powerful. Naomi and Ethan's foundation grew bigger every year, helping more and more families. They had 2 children who grew up knowing that doing the right thing is more important than being comfortable or rich. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Ethan would ask Naomi, "Do you ever regret it? Everything that happened?" And Naomi would think about that terrible night in the hospital when she agreed to marry a stranger. She'd think about the fear, the lies, the danger, but then she'd think about all the families they'd helped, all the lives saved when other companies got scared and started being more honest, all the good that came from exposing the truth. "No," she'd say, "I don't regret it, because something beautiful grew from something that started so wrong. And that gives me hope." "Hope for what?" Ethan would ask. "Hope that it's never too late to choose what's right," Naomi would answer. Hope that even when bad people seem to have all the power, good people who refuse to give up can still win. Hope that love, real love, built on truth, is stronger than anything. And in a world that often felt dark and unfair, that hope was enough. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe for more inspiring stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your like and share help spread messages of hope and encourage the people all around the world. Remember, you have the power to stand up for truth, just like Naomi did. You are braver than you know.